Council.
For this week's construction update, we're taking a look at 900 South. But first, a joke. A snake walks into a bar, and the bartender says, "How?" Let's take a look at 900 South.
Work continues all along 900 South, stretching from 900 West to 945 East. Construction from State Street to 200 East has been delayed due to the discovery of old trolley rails and beams. Work around the 9th and 9th intersection is expected to begin in early July, with this intersection closing for approximately 45 days. The public involvement team will continue to provide information to business owners and residents leading up to this stretch of construction. For project updates, please email info@slc900south.com.
For more construction updates on this and other projects happening around the city, please sure to stay tuned or check slc.gov/construction. On our interview this week, we speak to Heather Royal, Deputy Director of Housing Stability, to talk about the Community Development Block Program, a program that, if the funds are used well enough, can benefit our entire community. Community Development Block Program is kind of a mouthful, though, so I prefer the acronym. The Community Development Block, the CDBG. Let's take a look.
We're here to talk a little bit about the Community Development Block Grant Program, more commonly referred to simply as CDBG. The CDBG program is really designed to serve principally low to moderate income households by undertaking a number of community development projects and initiatives. Those range anywhere from public services, providing funding to local nonprofits that support homeless services, early childhood education, as is highlighted by this nonprofit we're standing in front of today. There are also a number of infrastructure projects that are done with CDBG funding in whole or in part. And then there are several affordable housing development projects that are undertaken with CDBG as well. So those are some of the basic things that they do. There are a couple other projects that we have talked about highlighting. One of those big ones would be the Three Creeks Confluence that CDBG was an active part of in helping take approximately 6 acres of blighted public land and turning that into an active, vibrant community space. That was a really great project that was done in partnership with a number of other entities, including some other Salt Lake City departments. And we do fund, as I mentioned, several nonprofits that provide a lot of direct delivery services. We also have a couple really great programs that the city operates with, in large part with this funding. We have the Neighborhood Business Improvement Program, which is affectionately referred to as our facade program. That program provides small local businesses with facade grants in order to help create a more appealing environment for the residents within the community. That's been a very popular CDBG program that we have. And then we also operate both internally and through external community partners a number of home rehabilitation projects throughout the city, which will provide low and moderate income homeowners with opportunities to address necessary repairs or renovations that need to be made in their home, including accessibility modifications. Although the funding is designed primarily to benefit low to moderate income households, really the true beneficiaries of successfully deployed CDBG funding are the entire residents of a community, regardless of income or socioeconomic status. All of the funding that goes through Salt Lake City and through this CDBG program is deployed through an active public participation process and an open public process. So if residents want to learn more about the CDBG program within Salt Lake City and any upcoming public participation opportunities, they can visit our website at www.slc.gov/housing stability. They're also welcome to call our office at 801-535-7228.
Beach Boys, Beach Boys.
It's been moved by City Council Member Wharton and seconded by Council Member Pui. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? And I'm an aye, so it's 6-0, and that passes. This brings us to the council public hearing. If you would like to comment on a public hearing today, we're accepting comments in person and online on Zoom. If you need to speak with our staff, please select Isaac Canedo from the list of participants. If you need to, you can also raise your hand in Zoom to indicate that you need something from the host. Taylor Hill on our staff will be calling those who wish to comment based on the order we received the names. If you are on Zoom, please unmute your mic when Taylor calls your name. We will start with our public hearings. And our first public hearing is for grant application items B1 and B2, which will be heard as one public hearing. Before we begin taking comments, I will first turn the time over to Sylvia Richards, Council Staff Policy Analyst, to give a short introduction.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The city periodically applies for and receives grants which fund some city programs. Each grant will receive a public hearing, which gives the public an opportunity to learn about the grants. Today, there are two. First is the Urban Community Forestry Grant, which would fund the creation of the Urban Forest Management Plan and Canopy Assessment, tree pruning, and park tree water optimization prioritization. Second is the Climate Pollution Reduction Grants Program, which would fund salary and benefits for a full-time program coordinator to work with members of the community and with other cities to create a priority climate action plan and comprehensive climate action plan. These plans would support efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And as a reminder, these are items for which the city has applied to fund programs and projects. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Sylvia. Taylor, please start with our first public comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There is no one registered for these items.
All right. So I will look for a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that we close the public hearing and refer this item to a future consent agenda.
Second, items B1 and B2.
Both items, yes.
Both items. It has been moved by Councilmember Mano and seconded by Councilmember Dugan. Is there any other discussion? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? That passes 6-0.
Madam Chair?
Yep.
I need you to recuse for the next item.
All right. Thank you. Councilmember Mano will recuse himself for this item, and we will pause for a moment. He's out. Right. Next item, B3, is regarding an ordinance regarding an ordinance, and it's a rezone at approximately 1350, 1358, 1370 South West Temple. And before we begin taking comments, I will first turn the time over to Brian Fulmer, Council Staff Policy Analyst, to give a short introduction. Let's see. Cindy, can you hear Brian? Is it? One moment until we get the microphone figured out.
Brian will sit over here to do his part of the presentation, and then we'll keep troubleshooting so that the public can speak from there. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay, this is a proposal to amend the zoning map for the properties you mentioned previously from their current RB or residential business zoning designation to TSA UCC or Transit Station Area Urban Center Core. The petitioner's stated objective is to consolidate the parcels, remove the current structures, and construct a mixed-use development with residential units above ground floor retail. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Taylor, please start with our first public comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's one person registered to speak to this item. That is Amy Hawkins, who is here in person.
Hello, council members. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I'm not sure if it's, no.
No?
Oh, there you go. Oh.
It's on now.
Now we can.
All right. Can we
All
have
right.
some happy medium there? All right. Hello, council members. My name is Amy J. Hawkins. I serve as the chair of the Ballpark Community Council, and I'm here to support the rezone to be limited to what staff originally recommended. The TSA Urban Neighborhood Core with a height limitation of 75 feet rather than the 90 feet in the TSA Urban Neighborhood, Urban Center Core as proposed by the applicant. The structures that are proposed to be rezoned at 1350 and 1358 Southwest Temple are over 100 years old. They're incredibly historically significant in terms of Latter-day Saint history, and staff correctly noted that neither structure is protected through any kind of local historic district. This is my plea to the wider Salt Lake community. We, as residents of the Ballpark neighborhood, we don't have the bandwidth to do what needs to be done in our neighborhood to protect these historic structures. We have rezone proposal after rezone proposal in our neighborhood. We have 80 to 85% renter-occupied housing in our neighborhood, and we don't have the bandwidth to do what needs to be done to propose the right kind of historic district to protect these structures that deserve it for future generations. Please reach out and help us so we don't lose more of these significant structures. We did reach out to historic preservation societies. And had these structures documented via exciting videographic methods, and we're grateful that they were. But when I visit cities and other places and go to festivals in other cities, they often take place in and around historically significant structures with the kind of architecture that is never going to be replaced in today's environment. I just visited Charleston, South Carolina, and those historic structures contributed to that atmosphere. I'm very sorry to see these lost.
That's time. Thank you, Amy. All right. Taylor, do we have anybody else registered for that?
That was the only registered commenter for this item.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Amy, for making the comment. I look for a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that the council close the public hearing and defer action to a future council meeting.
Second.
Right, I have a motion by Councilmember Pui and seconded by Councilmember Dugan. Is there any other discussion on this item? All right, I'm gonna ask the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And those opposed? Seeing none, passes 6-0. Oh, sorry, I'm so sorry. 5-0 with Councilmember Mano absent for this motion, and we can. Yeah, thank you, Jen. He's going to let Councilmember Mano know that it's time to return. All right. Whoa, welcome back.
I'm not used to how big it is.
Next item before is regarding a zoning map and master plan amendments at Riverside Cottages. Before we begin taking comments, I will first turn the time over to Brian Fulmer again, Council Staff Policy Analyst, to give us a short introduction.
This is a proposal to amend the zoning map and Northwest Community Master Plan future land use map for the properties at 1500, 1516, 1520, and 1522 West, 500 North, and 552 North, 1500 West. Current zoning is R1 7000 or single family residential, and the proposed zoning is R1 5000 and SR3, which is special pattern residential. The petitioner stated their intent is to construct 17 single family detached homes. Thank you.
Thank you. Taylor, please start with our first public comment.
Madam Chair, there are two people here to speak to this item. The first will be Tori Bandley, followed by Tyler Peck. Tori is here in person.
All right. Welcome.
Hi. So for my arguments, I will be referring to the Salt Lake City, Utah Code of Ordinances standards.
One moment. Can we restart the clock? Can you bring the microphone closer to your, perfect. Thanks.
For my arguments, I will be referring to the Salt Lake City, Utah Code of Ordinances standards for planned developments. I do not believe that this project will result in a more enhanced product that would be achieved through a strict application of the land use regulations. Per the city master plan, which promotes single-family dwellings, this proposed development is inconsistent. The development is inconsistent with the scale, mass, and intensity of the surrounding neighborhood where the planned development will be located. The orientation of the buildings will have a negative impact on the privacy for the surrounding properties. The development does not maintain the visual character of the neighborhood or the character described in the applicable master plan, does not provide sufficient space for private amenities, including but not limited to access to emergency services, roads, and most especially parking. It does not provide adequate sight lines to street, driveways, and sidewalks, does not provide sufficient space for maintenance. Parking areas are not appropriately buffered from adjacent uses because there are no parking areas. My biggest concern around this development is mobility. The proposed plan development does not support the citywide transportation goals and or promote safe and efficient circulation within the site and surrounding neighborhood. I personally attended a focus group for the city just this last week to discuss 600 North and the issues it faces. So I know that the city is aware and agrees that 600 North, especially from Redwood Road to the school, is a mess for transportation. Parking on 1500 West is not a solution for this proposed development, and street parking is already full, especially during the congestion, which occurs during school pickup, drop-off, and commuting hours. This development will only add to the issue. Additionally, there is pedestrian access to the proposed development on 500 North, which may encourage parking here. This is not a viable option as street parking is already full, which leads to frequent car accidents and deaths. Proposed design does not provide adequate emergency vehicle access, does not consider safe circulation for a range of transportation options, and will increase conflicts between transportation modes. Thank you.
Next will be Tyler Peck, who's here in person.
Thank you, council members. I'd like to second everything that was previously stated. Those are some of the concerns that we share. For over 10 years, we have been coming out voting against this planned amendment at this location. There has been similar construction done in the area that has used the already existing R1 7000, and they have been able to develop. But over these last years, the developer and the previous, David Robinson, have not been willing to budge or to consider building in the existing zoning as it is. I would like to really express the concern with the on-street parking on 5th North, as 6th North will be going through adjustments that's going to increase people to travel on 5th North because there is not adequate, or there's no stop signs, there's no dips, there's no reason for people to slow down. That section where this could be located is a very narrow section. We've had multiple deaths already, and parking is not feasible. You'd have to almost convert that section of 500 North to one-way traffic in order to have this. Additionally, there is a secondary use water line that goes through this location in an easement. It's been there since the mid-1950s, and that's an issue that has not been addressed in any of the proposals. I would recommend that you please reconsider and encourage the developer to develop in the existing zoning as it is and keep the Northwest Community Master Plan as it is also. Thank you.
Thank you. I will look for a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that the council close the public hearing and defer action to a future council meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Dugan and seconded by Councilmember Petro Eschler. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? It passes 6-0. Our next items, B5, is regarding a rezone at 1549 South, 1551 South, 1565 South, 1000 West, and 1574 South, 900 West. And before we begin taking comments, I will first turn the time over to Brian Fulmer, which is our council staff policy analyst, to give us a short introduction.
This is a proposal to amend the zoning map for the properties previously mentioned from their current R1 7000 or single-family residential to RMF 30 or low-density multifamily residential zoning. The petitioner's stated objective is to construct row houses on the properties. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Taylor, please start with our first public comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There is no one registered to speak to this item.
All right. I will look for a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that the council close the public hearing and defer action to a future council meeting.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Pui, seconded by Councilmember Dugan. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 That motion passes 6-0. Our next item, B6, is regarding a rezone on approximately 510 South, 200 West. Before we begin taking comments, once again, I will call Brian Fulmer, our staff policy analyst, to give us a short introduction.
This is a proposal to amend the zoning map for the approximately 1 acre parcel at 510 South, 200 West from the current D2 or Downtown Support District to D1 Central Business District zoning. And no development plans were submitted with the petition. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Taylor, please start with our first public comment.
Madam Chair, there is no one registered to speak to this item.
Right. I will look for a motion then.
Madam Chair?
Excuse me,
Oh, one moment.
Oh, there's
Madam
one.
Chair.
We have one person that is submitting a comment. I would like to say a few comments. No. Oh, you're fine.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I move that the council close the public hearing and defer action to a future council meeting.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Pui, seconded by Councilmember Dugan. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Those opposed? That motion passes 6-0. Next item, B7, is regarding an ordinance that would amend various sections of Title 21A of the Salt Lake City Code pertaining to non-conforming signs. Before we begin taking comments, I will first turn the time over to Brian Fulmer, Council Staff Policy Analyst, to give a short introduction.
Thank you. This is a proposal from the administration to amend the city's zoning ordinance related to non-conforming signs. These signs were permitted under city code when they were constructed, but do not conform to current standards. The proposal would allow more flexibility in maintaining, reusing, modifying, and updating these signs. It would also align sign standards with federal and state statutes, city goals, and support businesses. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Taylor, please start with our first public comment.
Madam Chair, we do not have anyone registered for this item.
All right. I'll look for a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that the council close the public hearing and defer actions to a future council meeting.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Pui, seconded by Councilmember Dugan. Is there any other discussion?
Other way around.
Excuse me?
Motion by Dugan. Second by
Oh, did
Puis.
I say, I'm so sorry. Motion by Dugan, seconded by Councilmember Puis. Is there any other discussion? I don't see any. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye. The motion passes 6-0. Item B8 is regarding two ordinances related to property at 754 South State Street. The first ordinance would amend the zoning of the property from D2 Downtown Support District to D1 Central Business District. The second ordinance amends the text of City Code to add hospitals and ambulance services as conditional uses in the zone. Before we begin taking comments, I will turn the time over to Brian Fulmer to give a short introduction.
This proposal would amend the zoning map for 10 parcels at approximately 754 South State Street from their current D2 or Downtown Support District zoning to D1 or Central Business District. This is the site where the former Sears department store was located. Intermountain Health owns the property and stated they would like to construct an urban hospital on the site. Hospitals are not allowed under D2 or D1 zoning, and as mentioned, the request also includes a text amendment that would allow hospital and ambulance services in the D1 zoning district. Thank you. As a conditional use.
Thank you, Brian. Taylor, please start with our first public comment.
Madam Chair, there are two people here to speak to this item. The first will be Christian Harrison, followed by Cindy Cromer. Christian is here in person.
Welcome.
When we first heard about the Intermountain's acquisition of Sears Block, the Downtown Community Council immediately reached out to our neighboring community councils, the Midtown Business District, and other urban stakeholders. Together, we drafted a letter outlining our hopes for the future urban healthcare campus, which you each received back in January. This is a once-in-a-century community development opportunity, and we couldn't think of a better partner than Intermountain, whose mission-driven health system has repeatedly put forward a bold vision for how healthcare entities should integrate with their host communities. Moreover, they're a health system with the financial wherewithal to actually deliver on their promises. We would not be responsible stewards, however, if we went into this based on a smile and a handshake. Corporate leadership changes, missions change, internal corporate politics can force leadership to make choices they'd rather not take. That's why we're coming before you today to ask the City Council require a development plan be submitted and a development agreement be put in place before Intermountain is granted the change in zoning currently before you. This isn't a strange request. It's the sort of thing that planning commissions and city councils regularly demand of large developers and large developments all across the country. And let's put this request into perspective. The moment the city grants the rezone, the Sears block will be worth between $20 and $40 million more. What business entity wouldn't spend $50,000 to $100,000 to secure such a windfall? Salt Lake City has zoning laws because it is our best interest to shape the future of our built environment, but they are a minimum standard of development. The $40 million windfall on a project that will impact downtown development for the next century, we can and should ask for something more than the bare minimum. Salt Lake City used to be a beggar. We begged for every scrap that any investor could throw our way, but Salt Lake City needs to shed its beggar mindset. And that starts with not settling for what really is less than the minimum amount of effort from a well-funded developer intent on changing the face of our city for the next century. Barring a vote to make up zoning contingent upon an acceptable development plan, we ask for the conditional requirement on the second item. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Cindy Cromer, who's here in person.
Well, apologies for being asleep at the wheel. These petitions were going past so fast, I thought I had missed my turn. I am not opposed to this proposed rezoning. However, I find the potential impacts on the Central City neighborhood to be unnuanced. I want to read from the planning staff's report. It's the planning staff's opinion the surrounding community, speaking about Central City, would not be adversely impacted by the rezone. The 700 South corridor east of State Street includes workforce services, the Geraldine Homeless Resource Center, the Liberty Senior Center, a huge power substation, plus a park and a burned building. This This corridor has too much institutional use already. It is not Intermountain Healthcare's responsibility to address this, but I think we need to, as a community, look at the uses along 700 South. So with respect to the block itself, we need an interior pathway. Major Street may offer an opportunity to negotiate a pedestrian-friendly route through the block. Secondly, this zoning request cannot require workforce housing. You can't do that. But we know that displacement is rampant in Central City, that renters now compose 84% of the residents of Central City. Renters, especially lower income residents, are the easiest to displace. There is no workforce housing for people employed at this new facility. There's none. Thank you.
Thank you to everybody who made a comment, and I will look for a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that the council close the public hearing and defer action to a future council meeting.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Mano, seconded by Councilmember Dugan. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. That motion passes 6-0. We have no potential action items, and we're moving to Section D, which is questions to the mayor from the City Council. Are there any questions for the mayor? And Mayor, thank you for being here. Councilmember Petro, go ahead.
I'd like to say thank you for the drone show. It was a really remarkable way to observe the holiday with neighbors. It was really fresh air afterwards, which was really exciting. So thank you. That was really creative and a good way to use our resources.
Well, thank you for approving the funding for it. And I'm glad so many people enjoyed it. And the Liberty Park drone show on the 24th of July is going to have some new designs. So stay tuned and show up.
All right. So that would be on the 22nd or the 24th? 24th at 10 p.m. Great. Thank you, Mayor. We are now at the general comment portion of our agenda. And as a reminder, for those joining in Zoom, Isaac Canedo from our staff will moderate our Zoom and will message you with any questions about your registration. Staff is handling many tasks, so please limit messages to technical issues and minimal information updates. If you do need to speak with our staff, please select Isaac Canedo from the list of participants. If you need to, please raise your hand in Zoom to indicate that you need something from the host. Taylor Hill on our staff will be calling those who wish to comment based on the order of registration or received comment cards. If you're on Zoom, please unmute your mic when Taylor calls your name. At the 2-minute mark, the host will announce time and your microphone will be muted. If you're unable to finish your comment, please send the rest via email, mail, or call our office. Taylor, you can begin with our first general comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There are 3 people registered for general comment. The first will be Casey O'Connor, followed by Angela Morgan, and then Chiron O'Wade. Casey, you may now unmute.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. My issue concerns Rose Park and Rose Park Lane. May 23rd, it just amazes me. But May 23rd, I wrote a letter to Victoria, our council member, stating that the weeds are way overgrown and everything. I've written since then, I think 7 letters, numerous pictures, and I keep getting blown off. And you go to the website for reporting things and you try and enter Rose Park Lane and they want a number. There's no numbers on the street. It runs by where there's a small park there and where all the soccer fields are. And then the last thing I was told was that, well, they're going to get after it. They told me the city people are going to get after it. They'll come and mow a small park and then stop. And I've taken pictures and a 6-foot fence along this walkway. It's a pathway where you're supposed to be able to walk. A 6-foot fence and the weeds are growing up as high as a fence. And I get it's so frustrating because, and I just asked them, whoever, Victoria and Sophia Allen, I think it is, that do we even have a functioning government? Because if they can't take care of what they already have, has been here for years, why even plan for something more? If you can't take care of what you own or what you're responsible for, or at least get answers for it, I don't see any point in moving on and building anything else. I'm very frustrated with it and fed up with the city. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Next will be Angela Morgan, followed by Chirana Wade. Angela's here in person.
Good evening, council members. I want to thank you for your service to our community. It takes a great deal of time and effort, and I appreciate that. However, the City Council continues to put off finding a designated location for sanctioned homeless encampments, as they've promised to do for 3 years now. Instead, they've set aside $500,000 to be given to churches and businesses to put tents and RVs on these properties. Some churches, businesses will look at this as a money grab opportunity, if not given a firm set of requirements when their kind and generous hearts and willingness to help the homeless is presented to them with the promise of large monetary payouts. Homeless encampments in our neighborhoods will be detrimental to those living in the areas and the quality of life and safety for those families. In permitting this action, the city is breaking its own ordinances. Specifically, tents shall not be erected for longer than 10 days on private property. So far, the city has failed in having any requirements for these grantees in setting up homeless encampments. The city needs to make sure requirements include assuring the grantees have informed their insurance companies that they will permit tents and RVs, etc., and require added liability insurance. The grantees should be required to inform their neighbors within a 5-block area in writing of their intentions of setting up encampments on their property. They should have a 24-hour contact person for neighbors should an emergency or situation arise, and be required to provide adequate bathroom facilities, access to running water, and adequate security on the property that will be hosting homeless tents and RVs. They should limit the size of the tents and the RVs and the number of people allowed in each. Instead of following through, finding a designated area for 1 or 2 larger sanctioned homeless camps, as you've been promising, the city is shirking its responsibility and placing it upon our neighborhoods. There's no reason why a larger sanctioned camp area couldn't be placed somewhere, such as where the tiny home village is designated. You need to quit delaying a sanctioned camping area. Stop dumping your responsibilities on neighborhoods and parks and start addressing this problem instead of kicking the can down the road. Thank you.
Next will be Chirana Wade, who is here in person.
Hi, I'm Kyron Wade. Thank you, all of you, City Council, for all you do. I'm a Salt Lake City resident, and I walk around Liberty Park often, and I've noticed with the pumps and the hoses that are put in the pond at Liberty Park, only one of the days I've been there, those pumps have been on. Every other day, the pumps have been off, and as a result, the water in the Liberty Park pond is just disgusting, and it's very hot, very filthy. And when I was there a few days ago, more than 40 ducks died of heat stroke because of the stagnant water that was so hot. This is 3 of the 40 ducks that died of heat stroke a few days ago. So I just ask of you, City Council, to just please turn the pumps on in the pond at Liberty Park and leave them on 24/7, and the red hose attached to the pumps, just sink them, get them in the pond a little better, and just have them running so that there's water flow, the water becomes clean, and the ducks live. That's all. Thank you so much.
And that was the final registered commenter for general comment.
Right. Thank you, everyone, for your comments. We're at the part of our agenda, which is E, new business, which we have none. So we're moving on to part F, unfinished business. And we have item F1 regarding an ordinance clarification, downtown building height and street activation text amendment. Now we'll look for a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that the council accept the clarification and adopt the ordinance as prepared for this meeting.
Second.
Could have been any of them.
Yeah, it could have been either of you. It's been moved by Councilmember Pui, seconded by Councilmember Dugan. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes 6-0. This brings us to section G, the consent portion of our agenda. I will look for a motion.
Move for approval.
Second.
Be moved by Councilmember Pui and seconded by Councilmember Wharton. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. This concludes our Salt Lake City Council meeting. The council's formal meeting now stands adjourned.
Thank you.
All right, with our new